Good morning again, and this is number 26, and this is the last session on step 3, and we've called it "Be Quick to See Where Religious People Are Right." And so I wanted to start off by just telling you a bit of personal history. In my early 20s, I spent at a Zen Buddhist meditation center and met and married my wife there. And then we moved from Rochester, New York to Mystic, Connecticut, and eventually opened a natural food store. And it was really my first experience of being self-employed and being in business. And I was captivated by it. And so eventually, I remember a moment one day. Seeing some guys in shirts and briefcases, and I thought, I don't want to be selling food all my life. I want something more professional, and I decided to go into the tax business. And my game plan was, I'm going to do people's taxes in the winter and then sail all summer, because sailing was what I loved to do. And it didn't work out that way, but I learned a lot from accounting, and one of the things that you learn is that if you get to the same solution from two different directions, you've absolutely increased the chances that you're right, that the information is true. And I was always struck by that. So the point of this session for me is the great joy I get. I'm really devoted to our book. It's one of the more remarkable pieces of literature I've been involved with, and I've been involved with several from different traditions. And I just find it's what it says. I can't believe sometimes that after so many years of reading the thing, um, I find something new or something that has more meaning. But what I'm trying to say in terms of this session is that let's see, hold on, let's see, yeah. This session is that I love when I come across information, and especially information written hundreds of years ago, that confirms or supports whatever we have in the big book. And so that's what this one about. This is about going back to some of these things that are in the study guide and seeing how they support what we have in front of us in terms of the big book. And the first two is just a review because we went through them the last time we met. But I just wanted to look first at this Father Guigo, and he was a whole long time ago, and he did this ladder of prayer where you move up from the ground to a more lofty relationship with the Creator. And then in the second part of that, he said, well, to do this, you got to have three things going on. One was fidelity to a practice, one was enthusiasm for your daily life, and one was goodwill toward all life. And this backs up a principle, a spiritual principle that we get from the Oxford groups, which was that your job is establishing the conditions under which God can do God's job. And it shows up in all kinds of things. One is we got to be sober. God can't do his job if we're not sober. And we have to get to some kind of sanity, which means that we're not powerless over our habitual mental reactions to our life. The terrifying thing to me in this depression I went through is how powerless I was over how badly I felt. And it's, I could make a case that for most of my life, I've been powerless over my resentment. And I've certainly been powerless over my fear. I'm an intellectually based person, but I've been in several situations where I was in kind of a panic, and somebody would try to rationally talk me down from the panic, and they couldn't do it. As strong as I think my mind is, you couldn't rationally talk me out of my fear. That's powerlessness. Um, and I feel more and more that the essence of this work is going from a state of powerlessness over ourselves. I mean, it's not alcohol. I mean, it is, but it's not alcohol in the world out there. It's the world in here. And so we have to get to sanity before we can really get to the point of listening to God. And another way to say this, I just said listening to God, and it's just this wonderful book that was put together by Wally Patton. And Wally Patton is the guy that wrote Back to Basics that some of you may be familiar with, where he takes people through the steps in an afternoon. They do these workshops, and it's a powerful experience because a lot of people are intimidated and put off by the length and depth that we need to go if we're really going to do this thing, and getting an introduction to it like that is wonderful. But he has a second book called How to Listen to God, and it's a profile of a man is the first part of it, but the second part is really the Oxford groups, and it's all based on a pamphlet, How to Listen to God. It's in the study guide, it's in step 11. But also, if you put How to Listen to God in the search bar, I believe this will pop right up and you can print it off the computer. And the first thing it does some presumptions, but then the next thing it does, it says anybody can do this if you will establish the conditions. So to go back to Father Guigo, what he's saying is anybody can walk up this ladder of prayer, but your job is establishing the conditions. And one of those conditions is fidelity to a spiritual practice. If you're jumping around between this and that and different teachers or different teachings or different methods, and we tend to jump as soon as one gets difficult, we'll jump to the other one because that seems like it's going to be easier. You won't get very far in any of them. You do wind up having to make a commitment. The second thing, this enthusiasm, I would tell you that after for years and years and years, waking up with a sense of dread, and if I gave voice to the dread, it's who's going to disappoint me today. Um, who's gonna might not say betray, that's a fairly strong word, but where am I going to be let down today? Where is somebody's behavior gonna well, actually show me my lack of control? I don't know, but and my only goal is to be enthusiastic about my life, and that's only happened. It's only happened because of what we do in here. And I it and I loved finding out, as it said in the write-up, enthusiasm, which is different than excitement. You know, step 11 tells us to keep away from excitement, but enthusiasm, its root is in God. That I'm enthusiastic when I feel I am humbly relying on God, and I am trying to be the person that God wants me to be. And then finally, goodwill toward all life. Well, that's the reverse of resentment. I don't think I can listen to God's voice when I'm in resentment. And I spent most of my life in resentment. I mean, I believe that mild annoyance and flat out rage, they're all the same. They're different in intensity, but they're fundamentally the same idea. So shifting from being annoyed with life to being enthusiastic and wishing people goodwill. You know, we're taught to pray for the well-being of the people we resent. It seems ridiculous, but it really works. So okay, so that was just to go back to Guido, and now I'm moving on to Chuck Chamberlain and the Prodigal Son. And I know I read through this, but I was getting in a hurry. It was the end of the time, and I just wanted to go back and make the point that at this moment, when the prodigal son awakens with the pigs, it's just a magic moment. It's a spiritual awakening because he is realizing in no uncertain terms that the people that are serving his father in the big house um, have a better quality of life than he does. And and I think this is symbolically when we realize that service is so much more gratifying than selfishness. I can tell you, I have lived under the tyranny of my own human mind telling me I need to do this, I don't need to do that, I want this, I don't want that, all my life until coming in here and doing what we do. And one of the advantages I feel I have as an older person is that I've experienced the failure of my self-reliance. I've done what my mind told me to do and remained miserable. The promises of my mind never came true for longer than about 5 minutes before then my mind goes, yeah, yeah, I know. I told you we'd be happy when this happened, or you got that, but now there's this. And then there's another thing that I've got to go do something about if I'm going to be happy. And I've lived under that tyranny, and that is the exact opposite of humbly relying on God and trying to be the person God wants me to be. And I'll go at it from another level. And I'm an accountant and I'm an investor. I have money in the bank, and return on my investment is a fundamental concept for me. I want to see a return on my investment, whether it's in a relationship or some sort of transaction, or any time that I put energy, effort, thought into something else, I'm looking for a return. And when I don't get the return, then I get this internal accusation. Um, well, there you go again. You know, you made poor decisions, you invested poorly, and you're not getting any return on your investment, or experience a resentment toward the investee because they're not giving me what I want. Well, it's a horrible way to live, and I guess what's been occurring to me since, well, in the last couple of years, especially around this notion of um, I am a body that has a mind, that's a human being, and I have a soul. And so as I get older, this notion that I've been investing in my body and my mind all my life. Well, I'm 77. I don't know how many more years I've got left. And so it's finally dawning on Marblehead, as they say, that I'd do better if I was investing in my soul, because my body and my mind are clearly going to stop at some point. They're going to terminate. And but my soul, according to what I read and according to what I feel sometimes, is going to live forever. It's not done. It's come here for some reason. It'll go off to soul school somewhere in between human lives, and then it'll come back. And my soul has spiritual guides. Sometimes we call them guardian angels, and they're all around, and there are people that can connect you with your spiritual guides. So I don't want to get too off, but this notion of living for my soul rather than being obsessed with my human experience, which I am. Um, but if I can turn a little bit toward the soul, uh, it's just a whole different result. And I'm trying to live for my soul more than I'm living for my mind and my body. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's so anyway. So I just want to tell you one thing. So George knows this, but there's a man named Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, and he passed away Tuesday, just shy of his 100th birthday. And if you've done any heard anything about Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, they are just, it's hard to, they are just so amazing, and they say such wonderful things, and you could skip the money. I mean, you could just listen to them about life, nothing about money, and you go, oh my goodness, you know. Um, well, Charlie Munger would say, you know, and I don't know the facts, but he said something like, I wrote my own obituary, uh, I don't know, say when he was 50 or 55, and then I tried to live to it. Well, it's a wonderful thing to try to do, to, you know, to try to say, okay, I'm gone. What am I going to be remembered for? And oh, Jack, he sure was resentful. You know, he sure had a lot of resentments, or, you know, just seemed to feel a lot of remorse, felt bad about himself or whatever. But it's just an amazing, amazing idea that you could live with your obituary in your mind, trying to live to it. And I don't think it's any different than when it says in step 4, sex conduct, inventory directions, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. You know, what if you ask God to help you write your obituary, and said, well, there's Jack. He died the other day, and this is what Jack stood for or was known for or whatever, and ask God to help you mold your ideals. And I hope George won't mind me saying, you know, he operates each day. He has a goal in mind at the end of the day, and maybe he'll say something about it when we have open discussion. But it's just a wonderful, it's just a wonderful way to live, to, you know, and it's what step 11 tells us to do. We have that nightly review. We're looking back on the day, and if you knew you knew how you wanted to be able to answer that nightly review, it could make a huge difference in your actions and in your activities and your attitudes and what you did during the day. So okay, so any rate, the prodigal son, that's the magic moment when he realizes that I've been living a selfish, self-indulgent life, totally based on my mind and my body. um, I'm going to get up and go to my father and ask to be a servant in his home. It's just a remarkable moment that we all can do anytime we seriously say the third step prayer, because that's what the third step prayer, it's an offer of service um, to our spiritual creator. Okay, now we're on to Emmett Fox's Wonder Child, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Emmett Fox. This piece of paper says he was a spiritual leader who lectured in New York City to thousands, including Bill and Lois. Bill and Lois went to hear his lectures. Um, he wrote 8 books. The one that he's best known for is why am I totally blanking on it? Oh, the Sermon on the Mount, which is his reaction to the Beatitudes and to all the things that were in the Sermon on the Mount. And Dr. Bob, they used to use that before they had the big book. Sermon on the Mount was one of the things that Dr. Bob used in his when he was dealing with people in early sobriety. So he wrote these 8 books, and the second was called something called The Power Through Constructive Thinking. I've loved him from the start. I saw Sermon on the Mount at a conference. I don't think I was at a big book conference that we have up here in Maine. Actually, that's where I met George. And this would have been 2010. And I just picked up this book on the book table, you know, one of those things where, and started reading. And then I got the reader, and the reader is so wonderful. It's called Around the Year with Emmett Fox. Looks like this, and it has a selection from his readings. He didn't do it, his editors did it after he was gone, and it involves all 8 books. You get little parts. They've edited parts of it. Sometimes they'll put things together. They're not paragraphs right next to each other. And I was such a nut in my early days that I went and found every book and page and paragraph where those daily selections came from. So if you're using that reader and you find you want to know more, send me an email and say, where does March 31st come from? You know, what book is that in? I want to know more. He's the first guy that for me has made the Bible's words um, inviting, I guess I'd say. Instead of putting off, they made it inviting the way he would interpret this stuff. And I remember one of his books is called The 10 Commandments, where he does his interpretation of the 10 Commandments. And he said that these commandments can be understood on many different levels. And where it really got through to me was when he talked about, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. And of course I'm thinking, don't swear, right? That's what it means. And he says, well, yeah, okay, you're not to show disrespect, but he says what it means on a deeper level is you cannot call on God for help and have it be in vain. Wow, that's just a whole different deal. You cannot ask for God's help and have it be in vain. You know, that was anyway. Okay, so this particular article that we're talking about is called "The Wonder Child," and it's Emmet's interpretation of the Book of Isaiah, chapter 9, verses 2, 6, and 7. And he begins. Let's see. I'll just read this. He begins by saying, "There is a mystic power in each of us that can thoroughly transform our lives, solve our problems, give us a new freedom and a new happiness. This power can teach us if we are open and receptive, inspire us, and help us find our true place in life." Well, for me, and especially based on this Jesuit stuff that I've been reading, this is soul power. This is the power of the soul. If I will ignore my body and my mind and its demands and its fears and its desires and all that other stuff, its obsessions, and try to turn to my spirit, I believe that's what this is talking about. This power is no less than the primal power of being, what our book calls the fundamental idea of God, which is at the heart of our very existence and which is the divine birthright of all of us. And then this is a quote: you need only make conscious contact with this power and to set it working in your affairs. Conscious contact is an Emmett Fox term, and it's not in I don't think it's in the first version of the steps, but it wound up being in the second. I'm not sure about that, but it's an Emmett Fox term that Bill Wilson got from him attending his lectures. And the beauty of it to me is that conscious contact implies unconscious contact, right? I mean, if it's conscious, it means I'm aware of it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist until I become aware of it. So if I am an expression of God, if my soul is here for God's purpose, by God's purpose, that's happening whether I'm aware of it or not. The problem for me is I'm so obsessed with what this thing is telling me. It's like watching the TV with advertisements all the time. It's up here in my head telling me, do this, go there. You need that. You don't need that, whatever. So Emmett says, then you need only make conscious contact with his power to set it working your affairs. This conscious contact, which is the birth of the wonder child, calls for the same careful nursing and guarding that any infant needs. After a time, the child grows stronger and bigger until you find yourself permitting that power to take your whole life into its care. What do we say in the third step prayer? To do with me and to build with me as thou wilt, as you want. Um, this is the result of the decision to really put God first. Isn't that what the third step decision can be? To really put God first. So, and I love his sentence about that first we got to become aware of it. And then we have to literally sponsor our own soul to have a bigger presence in our life. And we have to nurse it and guard it the way any child needs. That's why it's the wonder child, it's not the wonder man. We have to bring this alive, nurse it and guard it, and bring it up to so where it can grow up and then take over our lives. The last part of it is the government shall be upon his shoulders. So this last paragraph, walking in darkness, moral or physical. This is a quote from Fox. Dwelling in the land of the shadow of death, the death of joy or hope or even self-respect, describes well the condition of many people before this light of the wonder child shines into their weary, heartbroken lives. Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. These are the 5 promises of a life offered to our Creator to build with us and to do through us as it will. So this just brings up the whole notion of promises, and particularly trying to use the promises in sponsorship. And as you know, there are promises there are negative promises too. Don't forget that. There are promises all through the book, and attached to all of the steps. There are specifically third step promises. I mean, they're right together. 10th step promises are right together. 9th step promises are right together. Some of the others are spread. You have to go looking for them. 12-step promises, my goodness, just beautiful 12-step promises. And you can use these either personally or if you're working with somebody especially if you're, let's say you're approaching the third step with somebody and you're trying to get them to make a decision to proceed with the rest of the steps. Well, you can look at the third step promises and ask, do you want that? Does that mean anything to you? And maybe it doesn't, or there's some that do and some that don't, but anything will do in terms of motivating people to do very difficult, sometimes tedious work, self-examination, self-disclosure. These are not easy things for us. And I believe our job as sponsors is to try to facilitate that process for the other person. One of the things that the Jesuits, that Ignatius said with these spiritual exercises, which are written for the director, they're not written for the person that's going through the exercises. Our book is the reverse. Our book is written to the person trying to get sober, trying to get sane, trying to get to serenity. It's not written for sponsors. But one of the things Ignatius says is you've got to be flexible. Our book says it, it says it beautifully. We'll hit it. I'm not remembering where it is. It's probably in Working with Others, but it says, think about how you would like to be approached if you're the sponsee but you're trying to act as the sponsor. Not, I mean, the first thing is all we can really tell them is what we did. We can't tell them what to do if we haven't done it. But it does say, think about how you'd like to be approached if you were the other person. So that you're trying to, and it's, I think the art of sponsorship is when you're a tough guy, tough, demanding person, which many people need. They need a hard ass sponsor. Other people don't. They need somebody coaxing them along and being with them and everything in between. So, okay. So these are promises. And the first promise is that we will experience the wonderful miracle that each of our lives truly is. I said earlier, I'd wake up every day and my life was a burden. I had no idea that alcohol was making it a more difficult burden than it would have been without it. I was convinced alcohol was improving my quality of life, for crying out loud. And I did it for a long time. I'm not one of these people that came in young. Um, but I do believe that deep down is one of the things we talked about, Chuck Chamberlain saying when he was talking about the three conditions that with three characteristics that we all have. One is we're more emotionally sensitive, but two is we have this deep inner awareness that our lives are a miracle, and this is supposed to be a big and a good and a beautiful loving thing. Life is supposed to be a big and a beautiful, good, loving thing. But it's not. That's not what we see. What we see is selfish, frightened people beating on each other, making everything more difficult than it needs to be in all the ways that we do that. Man's humanity to man. They've been talking about that forever. Um, but this is saying if I will raise my spiritual consciousness, I will experience my life as the miracle that it truly is. Number two, counselor, we can receive unfailing guidance from this higher order of intelligence than our limited intellectual brains. This guidance comes through our intuitive minds in the form of inspiration as opposed to an intellectual conclusion. So that's another promise of doing this work. Number three, we will experience the mighty creative power that underlies all existence, including us, as this power's expression. So this is just the mighty power of God. And I just remind you, we've talked about this before, but there are at least three levels of miracles in our book that are delineated in our book. The first one is I believe, is a miracle of my awareness, my head, that the problem of drinking has been removed. And I also realize I didn't do it and I can't take credit for it. I'm not thinking about drinking at a certain point. That's the miracle of it, is what the book says. It's page 85, I'm pretty sure. That this first level of miracle is I am no longer obsessed with alcohol, and I didn't do that. Something else happened. That's the miracle of it. And people will say, don't leave before the miracle. Don't leave before the miracle that you don't have to work to stay sober. You're not even going to be interested. For Dr. Bob, it was 2.5 years. Some of us get it before we even walk through the door. And maybe we get it when we have a desire not to drink. It comes different ways for different people. The second level of miracle is on page 51, when it says that our consciousness of the presence of God in our lives is the most important fact of our lives. That's a miracle. I mean, I was not only thinking about drinking, but I was thinking about lots of other stuff that were important facts of my life. And to have all of a sudden my awareness of the presence of God working in my life, that's a miracle. It doesn't call it a miracle. It says this is an important reason why we should have faith. It's toward the top of page 51. But for me, after my obsession with all these other things, I'm saying that's a miracle. The third one, and I think that's a miracle of the heart, or a miracle of my feelings. The third one is a fifth step promise, and it says we will feel we are on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. That's a whole nother deal. I'm not only conscious of the presence of God in my life, Now I feel like I'm walking down the road hand in hand with this, according to the Wonder Child, with this everlasting Father, this mighty God, this protector, this guide, counselor, all these things. That's a whole nother level of miracle. Um, and I've had glimmers of that. Most of the my consciousness of the presence of God in my life is becoming more and more um, for real all the time for me. It, but uh, this next one, walking hand in hand with us, I can say that's a goal. I hope to experience that, and I've gotten enough glimmers of it to know that it's true. Um, so, any rate, number 3 was we will experience the mighty creative power that underlies all existence, including us, as this power's expression. 4, we can bring eternal protection and support and guidance into our experience. This is the everlasting Father. Um, and it could say, Mother, I'm just becoming more and more aware of how much the male consciousness has dominated the human experience through the years, and how much that needs to change. Any rate. So, and then finally, we can experience serenity, the deep peace of the soul. Emmett Fox says that the natural state of the soul is the deep peace of knowing that it's eternal, knowing that it has everything it needs, knowing that it is safe and protected, because it is an expression of God. It's just a whole different deal than the fear of my that I experience as a human mind and body that I have to respond to if I want to be around here for very long. So let's see. We can experience serenity, deep peace of the soul, the peace which passeth all intellectual understanding. I always love that benediction, may the peace of God, which passeth all understanding. You're not going to understand your way to serenity. That's not how it happens. Although I've always felt that's how it happens, I'm going to understand my way to peace. Um, okay, let's see. We can experience serenity, deep peace of the soul, peace which passeth all intellectual understanding. Want some of that? Well, then invite God into your life. Pause, be still, ask and listen, and do as directed. Get some conscious contact through our house cleaning process. Improve that conscious contact through simple prayer, asking, and meditation, listening. Do as directed, faith with works. Simple, but obviously not easy. Okay. Um, Lastly, I want to get to Emmett Fox's great mental laws. And these are in a different step, but I just thought as long as we are talking about Emmett, we would talk about um, these things. And these are, I try to tell you at the beginning of it where you can find them if you're interested. So these are found in a book that's called Make Your Life Worthwhile. It's page 21. They're also found in the Reader, Around the Year with Emmett Fox, January 23rd to 29. So what you think upon grows, number 1. Whatever you allow to occupy your mind will grow in your experience. This is the law of attention. Dwell on fear and it gets bigger. Dwell on love and it gets stronger. So that's the first thing, is where you put your attention, that's what's going to increase in your experience. Pay all your attention to the stock market all day long and you'll get one kind of experience. Try to read this spiritual literature and you'll get another kind of experience. 2 factors. Mental work involves a piece of knowledge and a charge of feeling. A good thought, but with no feeling, not much happens. A wrong thought, but with lots of feeling, a bad condition grows. Feeling takes priority over content every time. According to A Course in Miracles, there are only 2 feelings, love and fear. On our path, it's gratitude and service, or fear and selfishness. Um, so, and I, I really tried to make this point with our only two alternatives because I believe that's true. I don't think I have more than two speeds. One is acting on my human fear, and the other is loving the unity of consciousness, the unity of all of us. And I think that shows up. My choices are resentment or gratitude. My choices are selfishness or service. It's it's one or the other. Three, this is the toughest one. The law of subconscious activity. When the subconscious mind has accepted any idea, it uses all its resources to bring about its purpose. With negative, fearful ideas comes sickness, trouble, failure. With positive, loving ideas come healing, freedom, success. Harmony results from positive, constructive, kindly thoughts. What do you really want? The fruits of restless, irritable discontent, or happy, joyous, and free? Our steps are a way of re educating the subconscious mind. This is a huge challenge because we've all got stuff going on down in here that we're really not aware of. And it's why the step four can seem so laborious because you're going after stuff that you're simply not aware of, but is affecting your life. And you probably know Carl Jung had this therapeutic concept of the unloading of the unconscious, that as we grow in spirit, we have to unload all this stuff that is deep into our minds. And usually we do that to a degree in the fear inventory. That's where we're really looking for what beneath your level of consciousness hurts or threatens your sense of well-being. Um, okay, number four. So the first three are kind of conditions of mental life. And then these next ones are techniques. The law of substitution. You cannot drive a negative thought out of your mind. He uses the example of don't think of the Statue of Liberty. First thing you do is think of the Statue of Liberty. You can't drive a thought out of your mind. You need to substitute, and we do it all through our work. Cannot drive a negative thought out of your mind, but you can substitute a positive one to re-educate the subconscious. Substitute a loving thought, God, peace, harmony, progress, for a negative one of fear, suffering, lack, or limitation. At the turning point, we can substitute God for ego. So the turning point is another thing that we talked about earlier. And it's also the idea that I only have these two alternatives. For example, I stand at the turning point, and I believe my only two choices are ask my human reality for its advice, go to my brain and ask my brain, what do you think I should do? Or ask my soul for advice. And the problem is, I can't hear my soul's voice because it's so much softer and gentler and quieter than my ego mind's voice. That's why some people will say we're trying to do a couple of things as we go through these steps. We're trying to soften the ego's shrieking voice, and we're trying to raise so that we can hear this softer, gentler, quieter voice of the soul. Um, but I think those are our only two alternatives. So, okay, law of relaxation. This is just interesting. It's why we say take it easy. Um, the law of relaxation in mental work, forcefully exerting personal willpower is counterproductive because this intimidates and halts the creative mind. This is why being relaxed and still in prayer and meditation is so important. We can't command God's presence, but we can invite spiritual power into our awareness. This is one purpose of prayer. Be still, be honest, open, and willing. Um, just a word about the biggest challenge in the book is asking God to direct my thinking. I've never experienced God directing my thinking, other than it will show up as an intuitive thought or an inspiration of some kind. I have been able to make red light, green light work for me, which is saying, well, God, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking. Could you please give me a red light, a green light, or a yellow light, which means, go, stop, or let's keep talking about it. And I have gotten I can get a strong red light or a green light or a yellow light and proceed from there. I love number 6, the law of practice. Practice these principles. This is something we've talked about a lot. To become proficient in anything, we must practice, consistent, persistent practice, whether it's trying to overcome our powerlessness over our character defects or practicing the presence of God. This is about progress, not perfection. So important that our steps end with that. We've got to be able to accept our inability, our failure to be able to do something a certain way. And finally, the law of forgiveness, the total giving up of personal judgment. Judge not, lest ye be judged, because what goes around comes around. Judgment is a strategy using projection and self-justification to defend against personal selfish fear. We're going to talk about this one as soon as we get to resentment. My theory is if I send ill will your way, you will modify your behavior. I will be safe and the world will become a better place. But in the spiritual dimension, lack of forgiveness leads straight to personal hell. That's why we must overcome our resentments. Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to stop the recording and we'll have some open discussion. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Okay, well, let me put up the participants thing and you can unmute yourself and anybody want to say anything. Okay, class dismissed.
I'm Christina. I'm an alcoholic, and this week I worked on a 4-step regarding my relationships, and what I realized is that I know nothing about relationships, and I've been married 5 times, and when I went through those relationships, I seen that each time I thought that they were going to fulfill what I thought would get me out of the unmanageability that alcohol brought to my life. And some of those times were sober, so I had absolutely no interest in what the other person needed or wanted in that relationship. And so I could identify a lot of character defects or fears that I brought into the relationship where I need some support and suggestions is the turnaround. What is it that I really need to practice so that I don't continue this behavior?
Well, I guess the first, well, no, I'll do that second. I personally have been finding that column 3 of a 4-column resentment inventory is where the action really is, because you're looking for fear, and you're looking for what aspect of my human experience is hurt or threatened in this situation, this person I'm with. Is it my my pride, my sense of what other people think about me? Is it my self-esteem, what I think about me? Is it my ambitions, what I want to see happen in this relationship or in this situation? Is it my sense of security, my sense of safety? Is that what is being hurt or threatened? Is it a relationship in general, and including sex is what it says? Is it my financial? Is that what I'm? Is that what is what's being hurt or threatened? And we use that to find the fear, because once we find the fear, then we can apply the fear prayer and pray for the fear's removal and ask for redirection. It's a very powerful prayer that I haven't found anywhere else. The prayer for removal, relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. I pray that you now remove from me. So I would say and Emmett Fox says, the more specific your prayer, the more specific the result. Vague prayers bring vague results. Specific prayers will bring specific results. So the more specific I can be about the fear, the more that will happen. But what I really want to say is, and we can argue, I don't believe I can relate to God differently than I'm relating to you. So
Mhm.
if I take all the things that go wrong in my relationship and relationships, plural, and apply that to the big kahuna, I go, how am I doing these same things, my character defects influencing these same things with God?
Mhm.
And mine is because we're inventorying resentment, fear, and remorse. We're inventorying our anger toward something out there, um, our fear of something out there or something in here, and our sense of guilt that we haven't been the person we want to be. Um, so let's see, what was my I don't think we do that different. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Resentment was bigger for me. I wasn't conscious of my fear. Been a big thing that this has helped. Um, uh, so resentment was big. Well, when page 68, the fear prayer says we never apologize for God. I realized that I apologize for God anytime I get annoyed with the world out there. I'm saying this should not be. And I'm annoyed by the way it is. For me, that's actually an apology for God. So I want to move on, and I'd be glad to talk about it more. But I think there's some genuine parallel. I think there have to be parallels between the way I'm interacting with another person and the way I'm interacting with God.
Mhm. Thanks,
So,
Jack.
you bet. George,
Oh
I
yeah,
saw your hand. Yeah.
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 Yeah, you can hear me, right? Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Jack, about my obituary. I never looked at it that way, but yeah, this has become a game for me, and it's a fun game. It's a serious game, but it's fun. So what I have is a worksheet here, and I have at the end of the day when I come home and when I'm in for the night, I do this inventory, and all I did was I took the two paragraphs on page 86 and I just extracted those questions and I put them in this little worksheet. And during the day, I have a lot of stuff like everybody else. Got to pay my insurance. Fourth quarter taxes are due. I got to bring in some wood and all this other stuff. But that's not my primary purpose. My primary purpose is this. And so to keep me focused on my iPhone, I I have a list. So to give you an example, love and tolerance of others is our code, right? So I love to tell people that I love them without them knowing I'm saying it. And this is not my idea. This is Emmett Fox, right? I mean, not Emmett Fox, but Og Mandino. So when I have an opportunity, if I'm talking to somebody, they don't even know it, but as they're talking, I say, I love you under my breath. And so I went to my AA meeting yesterday, and 4 times I sat with people before the meeting actually started, and I told them I loved them. So that gets on my sheet at the end of the day, right? And then when we're doing that 2-minute meditation, I pray for the whole meeting that they'll all receive the very, very best that Alcoholics Anonymous has to offer. So if I'm extending love to a larger group, I call that my national anthem, right? So I can do that walking into a Stop and Shop, hoping everybody has the resources to buy the food they need or whatever. So that's how it works. And then I don't do this at bedside. I do this when I'm in for the night. It takes me 2 or 3 minutes. And the other questions are, what could I have done better? Do I owe an apology? What did I pack into the stream of life? And that's the tough one. Well, I'll go through the day and I'll be home. I didn't pack a damn thing into the stream of life. So anyway, this little worksheet works wonders. And lastly, when I go to bed at night, the slate is clean. And sometimes I used to get up in the morning, I'd be in a little bit of a funk that first 2 or 3 minutes when you wake up. But now I say, wait a second, I did that worksheet last night. I got nothing but all I have to do is put a smile on my face this morning. So anyway, that's how it works. And I owe it to this big book. And I haven't missed a day in a long, long time. And and then I go to the UPS store to have my copies printed, so I don't use my own ink. So I went 2 days ago and got 50 copies. And the lady discreetly that's running the copy machine, she's trying to look to see what this is all about. And I see her turning sideways trying to read it, you know. But anyway, that's it, and it's all taken right out of the big book. Thanks for listening.
George, would you be willing to email them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Give me your email or I don't know how I can get
Or you can email them to Jack and I'll get them from him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Send
you.
a PDF and then I can send it around. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to gong this gong, but I'm going to hang out here if anybody wants to say anything. And again, I appreciate you being here and getting the chance to do this. So thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. You're
Another
welcome.
great meeting. Have a great week, everybody.
You too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jack.
You're welcome.
Boy, they cut out fast, huh? I still read that Emmet Fox Round the World, and I read one just recently that I really liked, and it was about going to the water and walking to the sea and this endless source of water, and the amount that you could take of that water was dependent on the size of the container.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that one?
Yep.
And I just thought that was a great way to look at how you dig into conscious contact, and how do you make your container bigger? And it just made me think of it in a practical term that made sense. So Emmet Fox is he's out there. Some days I read him and I say, nah, that's not for me. But other days he really hits home. So he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Or he was a good guy.
Well, he still is.
He's not alive anymore, is he?
No, he died in the, I want to say the 50s, early 50s, but
yeah. All right. I don't know. I'm going to try to make this meeting as consistently as possible. I know that Sunday is especially right before Christmas. My granddaughter Cora has a birthday. We try to distinguish that from Christmas by celebrating on a whole different day. If it was up to me, I'd put them all together. And but that's coming up in 2 weeks. Next week I'll be on the road, but I may tune in and just kind of listen. And so you won't see my face, but you'll see my name. And but I want to make a commitment to this to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yes, sir. Well, give my best to Jane, and I'll hope to see you soon again.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. Oh, and
Thanks.
I found that email that you sent with all the different readings. So
Right.
I just had overlooked that, but I did
Well,
get it. So.
I like paper. I could do it on my phone, but I like paper. So you can print that. If you're able, you could print that, and then you could have them in front of you if you wanted to participate in the reading.
Sure, I'd like to.
They're good.
Okay.
They're good readings. They're good. They're good reminders of what the book is trying to say. So.
Yeah. Great. Okay. You have a nice week.
Okay. You too.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.